I remember thinking it was nothing more than a light-hearted joke. But by the time the sun went down that day, I was standing by myself on the porch of an old farmhouse in rural Tennessee, watching the sky turn gold, and realizing that a single careless sentence had made me face something I'd been avoiding for years. Before we get into it, if you believe in second chances, forgiveness, and the kind of hope that shows up uninvited, take a second to like this video, drop a comment, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe. Stories like this one exist to remind us that life's biggest turns often arrive when we're not looking for them. My name is Nathan Walker. I was 58, a widower, and fully convinced that my best days were long gone. 3 years before this all happened, I lost my wife, Rebecca, after she battled a long illness. We had spent almost 30 years together in Ohio, raised 2 kids, and built a life I thought would never end. When she died, it was like someone had reached inside me and switched off the lights. My kids kept telling me to move forward. My friends kept pushing me to meet new people. But grief doesn't work that way. It makes itself at home. It pulls up a chair at your table and convinces you that staying lonely is safer than daring to hope again. That summer, my daughter Sarah talked me into staying a few weeks at a small bed and breakfast just outside Knoxville. She said I needed a change of scenery, some fresh air, anything but the same 4 walls. I went along with it, reluctantly. The place belonged to a woman named Grace Mitchell, 42 years old, kind, hardworking, with a smile that put everyone around her at ease. She'd inherited the farmhouse after losing both her parents within a short span of each other, and she'd turned it into a quiet retreat tucked among fields, gardens, and winding back roads. At first, we were just polite strangers. She brought coffee to the porch every morning and checked in on the guests every night. But somewhere over those 2 weeks, something shifted. I started looking forward to talking with her. We covered everything: books, faith, family, old regrets, dreams that never worked out. She told me about raising her younger brother while their parents were sick. I told her about Rebecca, about the life we'd shared. Nothing improper ever passed between us. Just 2 people carrying old grief who'd found someone who understood it. One afternoon, Grace came out to the porch with a tray of cinnamon rolls fresh from the oven. The smell drifted across the yard while birds called from the trees nearby. She laughed at something I'd said, and in that moment, with the sunlight on her, she looked completely alive. Without really thinking, I said, "I'd marry you if I were younger." I expected her to laugh it off. Instead, she went quiet. Her smile stayed, but her eyes changed. Then she said something that knocked the wind out of me. That age wasn't what was standing in my way. Fear was. It landed harder than any insult could have, because some part of me already knew she was right. I'd spent years blaming grief, timing, circumstances, my age, anything but the truth. The truth was, I was scared. Scared to love someone again. Scared to lose someone again. Scared that letting anyone else in would mean leaving Rebecca behind. That night, I walked for miles down a country road with her words looping in my head. The sky went dark, the crickets started up, and my mind refused to settle. For the first time since Rebecca died, I admitted something to myself. I hadn't been honoring her memory by staying alone. I'd been hiding behind it. For the next few days, I kept my distance from Grace. Not out of anger, out of the discomfort of being seen too clearly. Then a storm rolled through the valley, knocking the power out across half the county. Guests crowded into the farmhouse dining room, candles lit on every table. As people talked and laughed and looked out for one another, I watched Grace move from guest to guest, making sure nobody was left to fend for themselves. She found a way to keep an elderly guest's medication cold. She arranged a ride for a traveler panicking about a flight. She kept a family's restless kids busy with games while the lights stayed off. She wasn't doing any of it for show. It was just who she was. Watching her that night, something clicked into place for me. Love isn't only romance. Love is showing up. Love is service. Love is choosing people again and again without being asked. The next morning, once the storm had cleared, I found Grace alone on the porch. The rain had left everything glistening, the grass catching the early sunlight. I thanked her, not just for the hospitality, but for the honesty. I told her she'd been right. I had been afraid, terrified that loving someone new would somehow erase what I'd had with Rebecca. She told me gently that real love doesn't get erased by new love. It doesn't get replaced, it just makes more room. Months later, back home in Ohio, we kept talking. Phone calls turned into daily conversations. Conversations turned into visits. Visits turned into plans neither of us had expected to make. A year after that storm, surrounded by our families and the people who'd become part of our story, Grace and I got married under that same Tennessee sky where it had all started. Before I tell you how it ended, I want to hear from you. Do you believe life still offers second chances, even when we've stopped expecting them? Leave a comment and let me know. Standing at our wedding reception, I looked around and saw my children smiling, Grace's brother fighting back tears, and a room full of people celebrating something that had once felt impossible. If this story meant something to you, like the video, share it with someone who could use a little hope today, and subscribe for more stories like it. When people ask what changed my life, I don't talk about the wedding. I talk about one sentence, spoken on a porch, on an ordinary afternoon. Because sometimes the words that change everything aren't the ones we're braced for. They're the ones that finally say out loud what we've been hiding from ourselves. I thought age was keeping me from happiness. It wasn't. It was fear. And the moment I let go of it, I learned that second chances don't belong to the young. They belong to the brave. Sometimes all it takes is one honest person to remind you that your story isn't finished yet.